Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is another revision topic which I'm doing because many of you have asked me to do it on the nitrogen cycle. So I'm going to be doing a detailed description of it so that you can do any question on this in the upcoming exams. Before I talk about the nitrogen cycle, just a little reminder that we are here on a trial and tribulations of this world, and mainly our focus should be on the hereafter. So, O our Lord, grant us excellence in this world and excellence in the hereafter as well, and save us from the torment of hell. Now, the introduction to the nitrogen cycle, we're going to be talking about nitrogen. Nitrogen is part of which biological molecules? Now, they're part of the amino acids. So, the amino acids make up proteins. Then they're part of nucleic acids. And nucleic acids make up DNA and RNA. So, why do we need nitrogen? This is the first thing which you need to understand. So this is often limiting the plant nutrient and many other uses of nitrogen. We also need it for the ATP molecule. We also need it for the chlorophyll molecule. So basically what do we need it for? We need it for proteins, and proteins can be enzymes. Proteins can be hormones. Proteins can be hemoglobin. Proteins can be antibodies. And then nucleic acid is DNA and RNA, which of course makes up the chromosomes. And then the ATP, which is the universal energy currency, the chlorophyll molecule, all these require nitrogen. So all organisms require nitrogen to live and grow. And basically the main availability of nitrogen is the nitrogen gas, which is 80%, which is in the atmosphere, but the plants cannot use it, we cannot use it. So how are we going to get the nitrogen? This is what we have to understand in the nitrogen cycle. Basically, the syllabus in the nitrogen cycle is a whole lot of very now detailed content which has been added in the new syllabus. Decomposition of plant and animal protein to ammonium ions. So a tree dies, leaves fall to the ground, a bird dies, all that is ultimately decomposed to ammonium ions. Then nitrification. So the ammonium ions are then converted into nitrites and then nitrites to nitrates. Then nitrogen fixation by lightning and bacteria. Nitrogen fixation means fixing the atmospheric nitrogen. And I'm going to talk about it in a little more detail. Absorption of nitrate ions by plants. So roots absorb the nitrate ions from the soil. So absorption of nitrate ions by plants. Then production of amino acids and proteins. The plants will make their own amino acids and proteins. So the leaf is going to photosynthesize. So basically it's made glucose, C6H12O6. But then the nitrates from the soil are going to enter the stem, and this nitrate is going to combine, and we're going to get an amino acid. But how do we get amino acids? We eat food. We eat plants, beans, dals, lentils, peas, beans, and all that is digested to amino acids, and the amino acids reach our body cells, and then it's put together to make proteins. Then it said feeding and digestion of proteins. This is the same thing we were talking about. Animals eat meat, fish. All that is digested to amino acids. Amino acids enter the blood, reach the body cells. And then denitrification. Denitrification is, of course, the enemies of farmers. Why? Because they're converting the nitrates in the soil back to nitrogen gas. This flow chart of the nitrogen cycle is the best that I could find. I've gone through millions of them, I think, and I usually don't like any of them. I feel they're not very explanatory. So let's look at this one now. I'm going to make it easy. I'm going to divide it into a number of portions. So nitrates in the soil. Now, how do the nitrates in the soil form? Basically, this is the atmospheric nitrogen, the 78% of atmospheric nitrogen we have. Now, lightning is going to convert it into nitrates in the soil. Lightning means what? When there's rain and lightning. So by that lightning spark, the nitrogen and the oxygen there combines with water, forms nitric acid, and then it goes into the soil, and nitrates and hydrogen separates. So basically the atmospheric nitrogen N2 is converted to NO3 by the process of lightning. And then we have the enemies of farmers. Why are they the enemies of farmers? Because they're converting the nitrates in the soil back to atmospheric nitrogen. The plant cannot use atmospheric nitrogen. And these denitrifying bacteria are actually anaerobic bacteria. And they live in waterlogged soils. So they're not very good. They are the enemies of farmers. Why? Because they are decreasing the fertility of the soil. So let's just look at this. I don't want you to look at anything else. I just want you to concentrate on this. So lightning converts the atmospheric nitrogen to nitrates in the soil. We want nitrates in the soil. Why? Because this is increasing the fertility of the soil. That is why the farmer puts fertilizer, which is of course what? Nitrates, phosphates, sulfates. And we've got then the bad bacteria, the denitrifying bacteria, because they are converting the nitrates back into the nitrogen gas. So the atmospheric nitrogen is no good. The plant cannot use that atmospheric nitrogen. So just concentrate on these two things. Atmospheric nitrogen, lightning forms nitrates in the soil. The opposite of that is denitrifying bacteria. And this is of course another paper question is the role of prokaryotes. Prokaryotes are bacteria in the nitrogen cycle. So the bacteria are converting the nitrates back into atmospheric nitrogen. Now coming to this was the first step. Now coming to the second step. Nitrates in the soil are absorbed by roots. So nitrates in the soil are absorbed by roots, but how are the nitrates in the soil, NO3, converted into a protein? So basically something has to convert them first into an amino acid. And then the amino acids have to be converted into proteins. So now, how is the nitrate in the soil, which has been absorbed by roots inside the plant, be converted into an amino acid? Now, we have to be very clear about that. Now, what we need to understand is that there are nitrates in the soil. So, in the presence of light and carbon dioxide and water and chlorophyll, the carbon dioxide and the water combine to form a glucose molecule. Now, this has to combine with a nitrate molecule. So, nitrates in the soil enter the roots and then up the stem, and they finally reach the leaf through the xylem vessels. The nitrates here are going to combine with this with the glucose molecule. So we've got now carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen, and this is going to result in the formation of an amino acid. An amino acid in the leaf. And then these amino acids are going to be converted to protein, and the plant is going to need proteins for growth. Because the plant has a cell membrane, there are structural proteins, there are enzymes, and the plant also needs protein, just like we need proteins to grow, growth and repair. So going back to the nitrogen cycle, now you can see here nitrates absorption by roots, protein in plants, protein in green plants. Now we come to feeding and digestion, and then that results in protein in animals. What do you mean feeding and digestion protein in animals? Basically, it means when you eat plant matter, like you eat dal, you eat lentils, you eat rice, you eat beans, peas, that is digested. So feeding and digestion, and then that protein is digested to amino acids. Amino acids enter the blood, reach your body cells, and in every cell, it will be then converted, the amino acids will be joined to form proteins, like in your bone marrow. The same bone marrow, the red inside the red blood cell, hemoglobin has to be formed. So the amino acids will be put together to form a hemoglobin molecule. In the pancreas, the insulin molecule is a protein hormone. So the amino acid will enter the pancreas cells and there an insulin molecule will be made. This is a detailed explanation of this. I'm sure you all know this, but I'll just quickly recap it for you all. In the mouth, chewing starts the mechanical breakdown of protein. In the stomach, the chemical digestion of protein begins from HCl and the enzyme pepsin. Number 3, in the small intestine, polypeptides are broken down into amino acids, dipeptides and tripeptides by protein digesting enzymes secreted from the pancreas. A variety of different transport proteins move these products from protein digestion into the mucosal cells. Some amino acids share the same transport system. Number 5, dipeptides and tripeptides can enter the mucosal cell. Once inside, they are broken down into single amino acids. Number 6, amino acids pass from the mucosal cell into the blood and travel to the liver. The liver regulates the distribution of amino acids to the rest of the body. Small amounts of dietary protein is lost in the feces. So basically, digestion and absorption of protein. Digestion and absorption of protein. So the amino acids are taken to the body cells, and in the body cells, then the amino acids are used as building blocks to make enzymes, to make hormones, to make mucus as a glycoprotein, antibodies as a glycoprotein. So they are basically proteins, but they have, when I say glycoprotein, I mean they have a little carbohydrate part to it as well. You study that a lot in the A levels. Then coming back to this diagram, animals excretion, and in excretion what happens is we get nitrogenous waste like urea. Now basically what we have to understand now, all this, there are 3 things, please understand. The plants die death, animals die death, protein in dead organisms, a dead tree, a dead bird, a dead frog, a dead lizard. All this and the urea and the protein in dead organism is decomposed by the putrefying or the decomposing bacteria. And finally what is made is ammonia. And you know ammonia is a very foul smelling gas. So whenever something gets, a bird dies or some animal dies, there's usually a very foul smell coming from it when it's decomposing. So this ammonia now combines chemically in the soil and forms ammonium compounds like ammonium carbonate, ammonium nitrate, ammonium phosphate, ammonium sulfate, because there's all this in the soil. Now, this is the most important part. The ammonium compounds are converted to nitrites, and then the nitrites to nitrates. This whole thing is called nitrification. Ammonium compounds to nitrites, a special type of nitrifying bacteria, and then the nitrites to nitrates by another type of nitrifying bacteria. There are 2 different types of nitrifying bacteria. They're not the same because one is converting the ammonium carbonate to nitrite and the other is nitrite to nitrate, NO2 to NO3. So NO2 to NO3 is another type of nitrifying bacteria, and ammonium carbonate or ammonium phosphate or ammonium nitrate even is converted to NO2. NO2 is nitrite and this is NO3. So this is called nitrification. Ammonium compounds to nitrites and then nitrites to nitrates. And these are of course aerobic bacteria, and this will convert the dead organic matter. That's why we plow the roots. Sometimes when we harvest the wheat crop and there are bits and bobs of roots left, so we just plow it back into the soil because it will decompose and return the nitrates. It will increase the nitrate content of the soil. And then after some time we plant another crop. Now this whole thing is called nitrification. Now this is a special part of the syllabus, nitrification. So ammonium compounds to nitrites and nitrites to nitrates is nitrification. And the formation of ammonia is ammonification. Then we come to another arrow which is coming out of atmospheric nitrogen. So there are 2 arrows coming out of it. One is the lightning one, which is going to nitrates. And one is this one, the industrial Haber process, which is going to ammonia. So in the industrial Haber process, what are we doing is we're taking the atmospheric nitrogen and converting it into ammonia. So we've completed all the different processes. Now there's only one left which needs to be done. And you see that is again a form of nitrogen fixation. You see this arrow comes out of it and this arrow comes out of it. So lightning is a form of nitrogen fixation, and another one is by nitrogen fixing bacteria. There are two types. There are one living free living in the soil and one which are called symbiotic, which are found inside leguminous plants. So the nitrogen fixing bacteria, what are they doing? They are actually fixing the atmospheric nitrogen and converting it into protein in plants. Converting it into protein in plants. How that is being done, we need to talk about this now. Now, what is nitrogen fixation? 78% of the Earth's atmosphere is made up of nitrogen. Although all living things require nitrogen, most organisms cannot use N2 directly. This is because only the N2 molecule is a triple bond that takes a lot of work to break. Indeed, they need nitrogen to be converted into usable forms such as NH3, ammonia, through a process called nitrogen fixation. This can occur naturally through lightning or biologically through the activity of special kinds of bacteria and archaea. Some nitrogen-fixing bacteria called rhizobia live in the soil associated with the plant roots. Rhizobia have developed a mutually beneficial partnership with plants. This relationship can often be very specific. A plant host may then only associate with one rhizobia species. Initially, rhizobium, which is the bacteria, and plant roots talk with each other using chemical cues. If there is compatibility, the plant will form specialized root structures called nodules. Inside the nodules, the rhizobia fix atmospheric nitrogen into a readily available form of ammonia. In return, plants provide nutrients and a good place to live. So the bacteria get a free place to live, no rent to pay, and they get the glucose, which is from the form of sucrose in the phloem. So they get free food and free place to live, and they provide the plant with ammonia, and that ammonia is then converted into amino acids, and the amino acids are used to make proteins. So nitrogen fixation by bacteria, nitrogen fixing bacteria in the root nodules of leguminous plants. There is this very possibility of a question like this: prokaryotes in the nitrogen cycle. You know, prokaryotes are bacteria. So we're going to talk about three: denitrifying prokaryotes that convert nitrates to nitrogen, which are the enemies of farmers. Then the nitrifying prokaryotes convert the ammonia to nitrites and nitrates. Then the nitrogen fixing prokaryotes convert the nitrogen to ammonia in the root nodules. And of course, we also have prokaryotes in the decomposing bacteria. They're also bacteria. So that's not been mentioned here, but that will also be considered in this. Now, a quick recap of basically the whole nitrogen cycle. Number one is denitrification, which is the bacteria convert the excess nitrates back into atmospheric nitrogen and release it into the atmosphere. Then nitrogen fixation by lightning. Lightning energizes the atmospheric nitrogen and oxygen and creates nitrogen oxides. Rain and snow send the nitrogen oxides into the soil below. Then nitrogen fixation in the soil. Bacteria turn atmospheric nitrogen into compounds plant can use. Some colonies attach themselves to plant roots, that is peanuts and legumes, and some live in the soil next to the root zone. Then ammonification. Microbes break down organic matter, dead organic matter, and convert nitrogen into ammonia. Ammonia interacts with water in the soil and becomes ammonium that is stored in the soil for plants to use. Then nitrification. Bacterial colonies use oxygen to turn ammonia into nitrites, then into nitrates, which is stored in the soil for plants to use. So this was the nitrification process, which converted the ammonium ions into ammonium compounds first, ammonium carbonate, ammonium sulfate, and then into nitrites, and then into nitrates. So this would be called nitrification. Ammonification was the production of ammonia when dead organic matter is decomposed. Denitrifying bacteria, denitrification or denitrifying bacteria are bad. They are the enemies of farmers. They convert the nitrates in the soil back to nitrogen gas. Now, I want you to be very familiar with the nitrogen cycle, and I want you to be looking at a few of these diagrams which I have researched and looked at them. So, if you just recap it very quickly: lightning, nitrates, atmospheric nitrogen, nitrates in the soil. Denitrifying bacteria convert the nitrates into atmospheric nitrogen. This is atmospheric nitrogen. Then we have decomposers, and we have these ammonium ions. So they are converted by nitrifying bacteria to nitrites and then nitrites to nitrates. So we have nitrifying bacteria. Then we have plants. So we have nitrates. Nitrates are going to be absorbed by plants, assimilation plants. Then plants are going to be eaten up by animals. Plants are going to die, decomposers, and animals feeding and digestion. And then we have nitrogen fixing bacteria. So with the ammonium ions, we have nitrogen fixing bacteria and the legume root nodules. So they're going to fix the atmospheric nitrogen. And the normal nitrogen fixing in the soil, that is also going to create ammonia. So we have two types of nitrogen fixing bacteria, either in the root nodules or free living in the soil. And all this converts into ammonium ions. So there are many different cycles like this, and everybody should be very familiar with this. So coming back to the syllabus, uh, let's look at it once again. The first point is decomposition of plant and animal proteins to ammonium ions. Then nitrification, which was the nitrite and the nitrate ions, the ammonium ions. Then nitrogen fixing by lightning and bacteria. Then absorption of nitrate ions by plants. Then production of amino acids and proteins. Then feeding and digestion of proteins, and then denitrification. So you must revise this. Maybe you watch this video twice. Maybe you just watch it once and you've understood it. But then you need to really draw this cycle, which I'm going to leave you at the end with that cycle, so that you can then draw it in your notebooks and then revise it 1 or 2 times. And I think you should be okay with it and do some questions on it. This is the diagram which I want to pause the video here. I want you to pause it and then I want you to draw it in yours so that it becomes easy for you to remember it. You see, remembering it is requires a little bit of time and energy. So you need to revise it and remember it. And for that, you need to really draw it and have a look at it once or twice. And that should be able to remain in your memory. Another very good flowchart is nitrogen fixation. B is nitrification, C is denitrification, and D is biological nitrogen required for amino acids. Purine and pyrimidines are nucleotides which are required for the DNA and the RNA. And nitrogen is also required for the chlorophyll molecule. So another very important use of the nitrogen molecule, that it is required for the nitrogen. N is required for the amino acids, DNA, RNA, and the chlorophyll molecule. Then decomposition of organic nitrogen is form of NH3, NH4 plus, and NO3 nitrate negative, NO3. So this is another very good diagram. This is the chemistry of denitrification reaction. The nitrate NO3 negative, NO2, then NO, so nitrate to nitrite, nitrite to nitric oxide, to nitrous oxide, and then finally to nitrogen gas, which goes back into the air, which is of course a waste, because the farmers can only use the nitrates in the soil. They cannot use the atmospheric nitrogen. Thank you once again, and please do subscribe. We're trying to reach the 10,000 subscriber mark, and I will be most grateful for you all for helping me achieve that.